The Venezuelan Sunday. Born in the Essequibo, the procedural claim of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana is summarized in requesting the International Court of Justice. That confirms the legal validity and binding effect of the Paris Arbitral Award, issued on October 3, 1899. A document considered by Venezuela as invalid. The Arbitration Award in Paris was a shameful political diplomatic maneuver carried out by the English crown, and in which the United States government took part. In which he was defeated and ridiculed by England in his claim to continental hegemony. In that trial, even, there was talk of taking us to the outlet of the Orinoco River. This award is null and void and was recognized by the British themselves in 1966. This was consummated when the representation of the United Kingdom, Michael Stewart, and British Guiana, Forbes Burnham, admitted and signed, together with the Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ignacio Iribarren Borges, the Geneva Agreement, on February 17, 1966, more than 57 years ago. In his first article he says, "A mixed commission is established with the task of seeking satisfactory solutions for the practical settlement of the controversy between Venezuela and the United Kingdom that arose as a consequence of the Venezuelan contention that the Arbitral Award of 1899 on the border between Venezuela and British Guiana. It is null and void." But economic interests, which we will touch on in a second part of this video, made oil company lawyers advise Guyana to lobby international policies. Motivated by millions of barrels of oil, resource that belongs to Venezuela and is being exploited at the moment. That judgment is nonsense, although, if there is something valid, it is that action must be taken immediately, because these oil companies are also taking advantage of the inexperience of the Guyanese people in the field of hydrocarbons. Venezuela already has the experience of more than 100 years of looting and knows the importance of black gold. Let's get back to what concerns us today. The trial at the International Court of Justice. Perhaps a superior intelligence is required to interpret and conclude that the Arbitral Award of 1899 was invalidated from that legal act, and, therefore, should never have been considered opposable for subsequent purposes. There is no cause that makes Venezuela accept in any way to give up what belongs to it by history, law, and reason. Faced with what has been described above, let us pay attention to this other detail. Our country has permanently wanted to solve this lawsuit between neighboring states, resorting to direct peaceful means in accordance with the regulations enshrined in public international law. However, we found that the former British colony, with which we maintain the centenary contention, never believed in the efforts of the good officiants, McIntyre, Jackman, Gervin and Nylander, who were kind enough to work to settle the controversy. All the work of these officials was sabotaged from the Guyanese Foreign Ministry. We always understood that their respective governments, of any political ideological sign, at no time paid due attention to the initiatives of the aforementioned good officiants, appointed by the General Secretariat of the United Nations Organization based on the content, scope and intention of the Article 33 of the Fundamental Charter of the aforementioned body. The parties to a dispute whose continuation is likely to endanger the maintenance of international peace and security will try to find a solution. Guyana awaited the opportunity, in a kind of legal ambush, to sue Venezuela before the International Court of Justice, leaving, directly to the judicial settlement. Contrary to the order of priority established in the aforementioned regulation, to settle the dispute. It is evident that when the current UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, refers the case to the court, on January 19, 2018, Guyana had already prepared the lawsuit against Venezuela well in advance, which they consigned on March 29 of the same year, all concocted with premeditation and inequity. What has Venezuela done and what situation are we in today? On June 7, 2022, Venezuela recorded in the court a preliminary exception, procedural act to which we are entitled, as a defendant, to resist and oppose the action filed against us. This act is called the preliminary exception. A preliminary exception is a defense mechanism of the states, which is legitimately admitted by the international community and used on some occasions in the International Court of Justice, in accordance with Article 79 of its regulations. There is sufficient doctrinal and jurisprudential basis in this regard. The preliminary objection delivered and ratified in the public hearings last November, when our delegation is based on formalizing serious questions, which contrasts with the improvised writing presented, unilaterally, by Guyana. What do we pursue, immediately, with a preliminary exception? That the court, in an early ruling with a prior pronouncement that we expect soon, dismisses the claim, because it constitutes a legal and procedural fraud. All Venezuelans have a feeling and a reason. El Essequibo is ours, and that is inalienable. We have the documents as legal titles and historical and cartographic support, constituted and constituent evidence to demonstrate that it was the British Empire that usurped and dispossessed us of a seventh part of the Venezuelan geography by means of traps at the end of the 19th century. They even had the wicked intention of wresting from us as far as the Orinoco Delta and a considerable part of the Bolivar state. We are emphatic in shouting to the world that we are not taking away 2/3 of Guyana's territory, as that nation argues before the International Court of Justice, with the complicity of international communication corporations in the pay of the oil companies that are exploiting our hydrocarbons. Our nation has been the victim, for more than a century, of usurpation perpetrated in bad faith, first by Great Britain and today by its former colony. In a future installment, you will learn a little about how the big oil companies exploit our Atlantic facade with their eyes set on the Orinoco Delta coast, which is also rich in mineral. The Essequibo is ours. It is Venezuelan land, and every time you look at the sunrise, you should know that the son of Venezuela born in the Essequibo